My name is Dr. Amy Greer, and I'm the OCDD Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community Services. I will share information about how to access home and community-based services, also known as Waiver services, through the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, or OCDD, within Louisiana's Department of Health. Waiver services help someone with a developmental disability live in the community while still receiving needed supports. And while this presentation focuses on waiver services are actually only one of the service options that someone with a developmental disability may be able to access through OCDD. Now, before that someone can receive services from OCDD, the person will need to complete OCDD eligibility. Once eligibility is established, there are several services that someone may need to access through OCDD, including flexible family funds, which are cash stipends, individual family supports, waiver services, and services at intermediate care facilities. If you have not completed OCDD eligibility and/or have questions about the various services offered through OCDD, you should contact your local Human Services District and Authority, also known as HSDAs, to learn more about these services. The HSDA in your area is essentially the boots on the ground, and they will be your resource to learning about our service system. One final note, on our website and in some of our written materials, we call the HSDAs the local governing entities, or LGEs. Throughout this presentation, I will use the term HSDA since that's how most of our families reference their local office, but the meaning is the same. The HSDA or LGE in your area is your office and the one that is there to help you learn by sharing information about important resources where you live. Once someone is determined eligible, the person receives a Statement of Approval, or SOA, from OCDD. Remember, your HSDA is the point of contact to initiate services and can also confirm your eligibility status. You should also be referred and connected to any other services that are available through Medicaid, the school, or Louisiana Rehabilitative Services, essentially any other service that is appropriate to meet your needs. For some people, they will still have unmet needs even though they are receiving other available services. In these instances, we can work with the person to see whether their unmet needs can be met with a waiver. It is important to remember that not all of someone's DD-related needs will be met with services through OCDD. OCDD services may be an important part of someone's array of services, but the person will still go to school or work and will see doctors and get needed therapies. So it is important to get connected to all needed services, those within the OCDD system and those services that are outside of the OCDD system. That's a lot of information to digest, so let's focus on helping you understand whether you may have an unmet need that can be met by waiver services. Once you have an OCDD Statement of Approval, or SOA, your HSDA will ask you if you would like to be on the Request for Services Registry, which is the RFSR for short. If you say yes, then your name is added to the registry and you will then be referred for a screening. The tool that we use for this is called the Screening for Urgency of Need. We call it the SUN. Once you've said yes and your name is added to the registry, you will then receive a phone call within about 2 weeks to schedule a screen appointment. We will call you by phone and we will make 2 attempts. So it is important that you answer our call or return the call if we missed you during these 2 attempts. If you have not responded after the 2 phone attempts, we will send you a letter by postal mail to remind you that we are trying to reach you to schedule your screen. Before I highlight information to help you prepare for the screen, please remember that if you do not have an urgent need on this first screening and your situation changes, it is important for you to call your HSDA to let them know. You'll notice throughout this presentation, I emphasize your connection to the HSDA. They are a consistent resource to answer your questions. Another important thing to remember is that you must make sure that your contact information is always kept up to date. We need to be able to reach you. So anytime you change your physical address, mailing address, email address, and/or phone number, you must contact your HSDA so that your information can be updated. The two main ways that you will be contacted are by telephone and postal mail. Keeping your information up to date is the only way we can reach you so that you receive needed information about OCDD services and to receive important information from Medicaid. Now let's talk about the SUN, the tool that is used to highlight your needs. You will be asked about what supports both paid and unpaid that you're currently using. So, what services are you getting now? And what support do you get from your family and friends and others, as well as support through other activities? We'll also want to learn about the unmet needs you may still have, even with those supports. It's also important for us to hear about what these supports may look like over time, what is likely to remain in place, and what is perhaps in place now, but at some point will change or not continue. Also, we'll want to hear about the types of challenges you're having and how your ability to stay living in your home may be impacted without the needed supports. So just to recap, the screen will focus on what available services you're using. Are there unmet needs that waiver services can meet? And whether these problems will be significant without support. This information will then determine whether you currently have an urgent or emergent unmet need. A score of 3 means that you have an urgent need for waiver supports within the next year. A score of 4 means that you have emergent needs for a waiver and would need these supports as quickly as possible. For persons who score a 0, 1, or 2, it means that the supports the person is currently receiving is either meeting the needs or the person's needs may change at a later point in time, but there are not current urgent or emergent unmet needs. Your SUN score is only a snapshot of your needs right now. So if you score a 0, 1, or 2, you will be scheduled to have a rescreen at a later point in time so that we can learn whether your needs remain the same or if they've changed. And if your needs change before we contact you for a rescreen, please contact your HSDA so that we can schedule a rescreen sooner for you. Before we talk about the next steps for someone who scores a 3 or 4, let's recap and review the steps that have been covered so far. Contact your HSDA to complete OCDD eligibility. If you are not eligible, you will receive a statement of denial or SOD, and based upon your needs, you may be referred for other service options. If you receive an SOD, you will have appeal rights. If you are eligible, you will receive a statement of approval or SOA, and you will be asked if you were interested in receiving services. If you do not want any services at this time, you will keep your SOA and you can let your HSDA know at any time if you think you need or want services. If you say yes that you are interested in services, your name will be placed on the Request for Services Registry, or RFSR, and in approximately 2 weeks, someone will contact you to schedule a SUN. Based on whether you have urgent or emergent needs, you will receive a waiver offer. If you do not have current urgent or emergent unmet needs, you will remain on the Request for Services Registry, or RFSR, and a rescreening timeframe will be set. If your needs change before your scheduled rescreen, contact your HSDA so that we can schedule a rescreen sooner. If you score a 3 or 4, which means you have urgent or emergent needs, you will not receive another son. For persons who score a 3 or a 4 on the son, they will then receive a waiver offer. There are numerous steps and activities that must occur before your waiver services can begin. And while the score of 3 or 4 indicates that you have urgent or emergent needs, the waiver is not an emergency service that can begin immediately once you've received the waiver offer in the mail. There are steps in this process that must be completed, as well as mailing timeframes, support planning, completing the long-term care Medicaid application, the MEDT process if needed, that's the medical Medicaid determination of your disability, as well as securing housing if needed. So those are some of the bigger steps on the way to getting your waiver in place. And if it feels overwhelming, that is understandable. Hopefully, with the information in the rest of this presentation, you will feel better prepared to know what you need to do so that you can be connected to waiver services as quickly as possible. Let's start with what happens when you receive the waiver offer. You will receive the waiver offer by postal mail. You must accept and sign the offer and choose a support coordination agency. Information about agencies in your area will be included in the waiver packet that you receive in the offer by postal mail. You must then mail the offer and your choice of a support coordination agency back using the enclosed envelope, and the support coordination agency will be notified of your selection. The other important document that is sent to you with the waiver offer is the 90L form. You will need to schedule an appointment so that the 90L form can be completed. The 90L can be completed by your medical doctor or a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant with MD oversight. Here's a tip to keep things moving. You do not have to have the 90L completed and signed before mailing back the acceptance letter and support coordination agency selection. You can give the completed and signed 90L to your support coordinator during planning. So while this form must be completed, it does not have to be completed before mailing back the acceptance letter and support coordination agency selection. Those two things need to be done as quickly as possible to keep the waiver moving. Once you've chosen your support coordination agency and mailed back the acceptance letter, the support coordination agency will be notified of your selection. Once you're linked to that agency, your HSDA is also notified of the agency you've chosen. The selected agency will call you within 3 days of getting notice so that planning discovery can begin. If the person is 18 years of age and older and in an adult waiver, a needs-based assessment will also be completed. The support coordinator will complete an in-home, face-to-face visit to plan supports. The initial plan of care meeting must be conducted in person. In addition to planning discussion, development of the plan of care, finalization, and submission of that plan of care, the support coordinator will also complete documentation to alert Medicaid. This is the long-term care piece of the initial linkage into waiver. Earlier, I mentioned the long-term care Medicaid application, and your support coordinator can also help you complete this application. Medicaid will then conduct a financial review based on the info in this application. Once the review is complete, the waiver will then be certified and a decision notice from Medicaid is mailed to you. Waiver services are then ready to begin. While I've outlined sequential steps, some of the actions are going to be occurring at the same time as others. But the purpose of describing this by way of steps is to actually highlight that there are actions that are occurring on the OCDD side by way of support coordination, but there are also actions occurring in Medicaid, which is separate from OCDD. Now that we've covered the process steps for getting connected to a support coordinator and waiver services, let's take a closer look at the tiered waiver design. As part of this, I'd like to share some information about why HCBS waivers were created and the purpose for these services. Before waiver services were developed, individuals with significant needs and their families were faced with making a difficult choice between staying at home without needed support or living in an institution so that needed support could be received. Fortunately, the waiver service was developed as a means to support individuals with disabilities so that they could live in the community and make choices to live where the person wants to live and to build meaningful connections and relationships outside of the family and the individuals that support them, and engage in community life and activities that are meaningful and important to the person. This includes the opportunity to work in competitive integrated settings. So in conjunction with any other needed services, the waiver is intended to offer support to connect the person to the people, places, and activities that matter the most and that form a foundation toward living a full and meaningful life as envisioned by that person. Now let's talk about OCDD's approach to HCBS services so you can better understand how the waiver you receive is determined. OCDD uses a tiered waiver design, and because of this design, we do not currently have a wait list for waiver services. By using a tiered approach, we are able to sustain the system so that we can respond to most people and provide the right amount of services at the right time, so people get connected to the waiver that best meets their needs. Youth who score a 3 or 4 on the SUN will receive a Children's Choice Waiver offer, and adults who score a 3 or 4 on the SUN will receive a Supports Waiver offer. And remember, even with the Children's Choice Waiver, youth continue to have access to early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment, or EPSDT services that are needed and for which they meet criteria, in addition to any other services through the school system or through the health plan. And with the Supports Waiver, adults will continue to have access to long-term personal care services, or LTPCS, that are needed and that they meet criteria for. As part of planning for needed supports, information about unsupported time, available natural and community supports, the ability to share supports, and technology options will be considered. Since no two people are alike, the amount and type of supports are directly related to the person and identified needs. The OCDD tiered waiver design includes 4 waivers, with each waiver having specific service packages and eligibility requirements. There are waiver fact sheets on the LDH OCDD website that highlight service distinctions across the 4 waivers, but there are general service categories to help you get an idea of services. These categories are in-home, respite, employment and day services, environment and equipment, housing, including transitional, and professional services. The professional services are not the same as or intended to replace professional services that someone would receive through their health plan. And these professional services do not take the place of EPSDT or state plan services. So you will still need to get services through Medicaid and/or your health plan for your health and behavioral health needs. While the Children's Choice is the initial waiver offered to youth, and the Supports Waiver is the initial waiver offered to adults, there are 2 additional waivers, the Residential Options Waiver and the New Opportunities Waiver. In general, the needs of most youth are able to be met through the Children's Choice Waiver since youth continue to have access to EPSDT services. However, there is a crisis designation for time-limited impacts on someone's needs, and if these impacts are expected to be longer term and the crisis designation is insufficient to meet the needs, then a bump to the higher tiered waiver that can meet the youth's needs can be pursued. And for adults, if the Supports Waiver plus LTPCS services are not sufficient to meet the person's needs, a bump to the higher tiered waiver that will meet the person's needs can be pursued. So to summarize the outcomes and current status associated with OCDD's tiered waiver design, If a person scores a 3 or a 4 on the SUN, they will receive a waiver offer. Rescreening occurs on a routine schedule, but if needs change before a scheduled rescreen, the individual and family can contact the HSDA for an earlier rescreen. And remember, these rescreens are only occurring for persons who score a 0, 1, or 2 on the SUN, because individuals that score a 3 or 4 are considered to have urgent or emergent needs and will receive a waiver offer. We do not have a wait list currently for waiver services, so there are no people actively waiting for services they need today. Waiver opportunities are dependent upon funding, but by using a tiered waiver approach, OCDD can offer waiver services to those who are most in need and assure these individuals receive the right amount of services at the right time. Just as I highlighted the flow from getting OCDD eligibility to scheduling a SUN, I will now highlight the tiered waiver flow for youth and then adults. Once the waiver acceptance letter is returned and a support coordination agency is selected, support coordination will work with you so that planning discovery occurs and a plan of care is developed for the Children's Choice Waiver. If the identified needs can be met with the Children's Choice Waiver, then services proceed. If the Children's Choice Waiver doesn't meet the youth's needs, then crisis designation is requested. If the crisis designation is temporary and meets the needs, then services proceed with the Children's Choice Waiver. If there is a continued need for crisis designation beyond 1 year, then a request is made to move to a higher tier waiver via the ROW and then the NOW. For adults, once the waiver acceptance letter is returned and the support coordination agency is selected, the support coordinator will work with the person so that planning discovery occurs along with the needs-based assessment, the LA+, and the plan of care is then developed using the guided sequence. If the supports waiver meets eligibility-based support needs, then services proceed with the supports waiver. If this waiver does not meet eligibility-based support needs, you will work with your support coordinator who will work with the HSDA to determine whether the ROW can meet your eligibility-based needs. As part of this, an ICAP will be administered to help with determining what level within the ROW would meet the person's eligibility-based support needs. If the ROW does not meet these needs, your support coordinator will work with the Human Services District and Authority and state office on consideration of the NOW to meet your eligibility-based support needs. As I shared at the beginning of this presentation, the link and QR code to help you reach your HSDA is included in this slide. Your HSDA is the resource to answer questions about OCDD services and eligibility. I hope the information that I shared with you gives you a better understanding of OCDD's service system and how to get connected to the services you need.